Welcome back to the Woman in Between podcast. I am really excited to have another special guest, Sean. Welcoming Sean to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us. So I just wanted to, turn it over to you, introduce yourself, welcome you here, and we'd love to just learn a little bit about you.
Thanks for the opportunity. First of all, to be in front of the audience. I don't take this lightly, so that's a blessing. Thanks for inviting me. Sean Heineman here. A sinner saved by grace. I'm grateful for that. Husband, father, podcaster, pre-engagement coach, especially if you've been down that divorce road and you want to get this thing to try again. That's where I come in and help people in that process. Father of four. I'm a YouTuber, podcaster, all that other good stuff, friend, mentor,
All the things.
all things. Yeah.
All the things. I feel like all of the guests that we've had on here have been just these multifaceted people where not only are they parents, but they might be entrepreneurs, right? Like you said, podcaster, content creator, which is huge. And so you are balancing a lot while also helping people navigate, right? Whether it's dating or remarriage. And I know that we talked initially before this call, but I wanted to dive a little bit into your experience coaching. What got you started and what are you really focusing on and prioritizing when you're speaking with your clients?
Yes. Well, I started this for those who know me, if they've been with me a long time. I was doing this before, probably about 10 years ago, probably even more.
Wow.
Yeah. So I rebranded, went through a divorce, rebranded. It's scary to remarry, right? And ultimately helping singles, because a lot of times singles, they don't trust themselves when it comes to remarriage or going into marriage. They're like, kind of apprehensive about this process. And, I really like them, but, so a lot of times I'm
Yeah.
teaching confidence and letting singles know that everyone is flawed. We're all broken. It just depends on what you're willing to deal with. You have to know what works for you and what doesn't. And if it doesn't, that's okay. But if you're willing to deal with some things, because again, we're all beautifully broken, I believe we can all grow and mature together. I think sometimes when we get together in relationships, it's probably the fastest way to mature because you have someone that's holding this mirror,
Yes. I
looking up to
completely agree
you.
with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're seeing all of the details and the behind the scenes that no one would see unless they're with you, day to day. And even still, as spouses, you're going to work, right? So you're still only seeing pieces. But as we saw when COVID came, right, a lot of us were seeing that side of our significant others 24/7. And I think that's probably also why we saw maybe a surge in divorce rates, because you're seeing even more details of a person. You mentioned the rebrand. So you've been coaching throughout your first marriage and your current marriage, right? And I think I was listening to one of your episodes that you did, maybe it was like 10 days ago, where you were talking about how you had to kind of almost announce like, hey, I'm going through this divorce. And how do you navigate that when you have a platform of coaching people through relationships? And so I kind of wanted to hear a little bit more of like what that looked like for you, and also maybe how that changed how you coached singles.
Great question. Well, yeah, I think the episode you was referring to, it was a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was interviewing Coriel. Shout out to
Yes.
her. And I was saying it's important to, when we allow people in our space, when we're coaching, we're putting all this information out here, these statistics and interviewing people. And so we allow people into our life. So when you're going through trials and tribulations, whether if that's a divorce, you're going through a difficult time, I don't believe you have to let everybody in on everything. Some people just can't handle everything because some people look at you in a different light,
Yes, that is true.
right?
That is true.
So I think, so at the time when I was going through my divorce, I was like, I let people in. I've been coaching people for years. It's only right that the people who have been supporting me, that I let them know what's going on as well.
Mm-hmm.
I even was going to go through I was going to do a whole series where I just kind of went through the whole divorce, but I was like, probably not. So
Yeah.
yeah, but that's how serious I was about letting people know that this is real. I'm going through a divorce, and I struggled with it because there were people in my church that was like, because here it is, I'm teaching classes on this stuff, and they're like, well, if you get in a divorce, what does that say about us? What does that say for us?
Yeah.
And that stuck with me, and that hurt. So I was like, yeah, let me just put this out there and let people know how I'm doing. And the response was I had a lot of great response.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. But then I also had people who was like, oh, you're divorced now. And I was like, I didn't put the video out there for that. Okay. So you just never.
Everybody does take it differently, but I do agree with you about just being transparent. And I do also feel like divorce is a humbling experience to show like sometimes you really can use all of the tools that you have and it just could not be a fit. Or so it's really great to have that transparency. I know even for me with my platform, choosing right what you share. So I definitely understand what you're saying about, should I put out a whole series on my divorce and why I even kind of grappled with that, where it's like, how much do I want to really share, and thinking through like, okay, who do these stories really impact, right? Especially putting it out there on the internet. So yeah, I'm like it. And I think even on that episode, or it could have been a different one, I feel like I listened to a lot of content, but it's like, if I don't want anybody questioning me about it, then I'm not going to put it out there. So that's kind of where I came from with it. But I also don't mind answering questions.
No, I hear you. And the funny thing is, because I was doing this before as a content creator, I mean, I had over 150 something videos that I got rid of. I was,
Yeah.
monetized and everything, but because my ex-wife was in videos, and those are some of my highest earning videos.
Hmm.
You know what? I'm gonna just scratch it. It's okay. I just want my peace.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got rid of everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometimes you had to kind of burn some things to the ground, just let it go. Especially, I know it's hard when that's something that you earn money on too. So you want your name on it still. I definitely get it. So I know you were saying, so you were married before, for the audience, how long were you married?
I was married. It was going on 15 years, but we were separated.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, Yeah,
Yeah.
about 15 years. But during that time, it took forever for the paperwork to go through and all the other stuff. It was a mess. So,
I'm
and that's
like,
that's that's a whole different episode.
that is a whole, I'm like, there's the emotional divorce and then there's the legal paperwork divorce. And those are two very different things.
Yes.
Yeah, you can be emotionally divorced for about 15 years and, legally divorced for however long. I feel like there can be differences with it.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, and I've talked about this in previous episodes, the last like 5 years of my marriage, emotionally, I was checked out. And I see that happen with men a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They're still married, but they're not there.
They're not there. Like, are you saying like they're no longer committed? They're no longer loyal? Like, what does that look like, or what did that look like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Each man is different. I don't know. But for me,
Yeah, I'm not going to have you speaking. We do not need it to be that type of podcast. I do not need anybody coming from my neck. Thank you. Yeah. So you do not need to speak for the general population.
oh, that's funny. No, for sure. For me, I didn't step out or anything of that nature. I was, still committed, still with the family, still doing things. And my ex-wife, she told me, I remember one day she was like, you don't love me no more.
Mm,
And I was like, I do. And I like tried to play it off because I'm just thinking like, at the time, I didn't have enough strength or courage to
yeah.
leave the marriage within those 5 years. I actually should have walked away then.
Yeah.
instead of staying and maybe giving this false hope. Because I'm thinking, what does that look like on the other side? God is going to be mad at me. God hates divorce, all these different
I
things.
definitely understand that. And I think for a lot of believers, that is what holds a lot of people back. I definitely understand that. I felt so much relief when I found a church that understood and supported those that went through divorce. But the shame in that as a Christian, I definitely understand. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's hard.
Yeah.
So, well, and it's funny that you say like the checking out part, because I think I can even look back and see that even in my marriage. And, they talk about like a lot of people will say women will check out, right? They will, silently plan their getaway and whatnot. And sometimes that's really not the case. I know a lot of women that are completely blindsided and had, no idea. For me, I think I just had no idea like really how to solve the situation. And it just got to a point where I was like, this is no longer healthy. This person keeps saying they don't want you. So you might as well just bow out. But I think you can see that sometimes where someone slowly starts to drift away, whether it's mentally, those little actions. There is this divorce attorney who did a YouTube channel and he talks about the realities of divorce and what he sees in his cases. And he references the saddest divorce being a woman saying that for years her husband would automatically refill the coffee without her asking, without her, putting it on a list. He would always do this. And she's like, he stopped doing it. And she didn't say anything for weeks. And then he just never did it. And it was something that feels so small, but thoughtfulness, is still like a tactical act. Like you can still be considerate. And so when you start seeing those little pieces, and I remember even seeing that for myself, where I'm like, coming home from a trip, I'm like, dang, it's like, you're not even gonna help me with my bags or say hi. Like, you don't really care about me. And that's also unfortunate having been on that end. But hearing your side of it and knowing that you were withdrawing as well, it sounds like it was also a devastating experience for you too.
Yeah. It's real. I've interviewed guys who've been through a divorce. I did a Life After Divorce series on my YouTube channel, and I'm just talking to people and their experiences. And a lot of the guys that I talk to on there, they say that I was still married, but mentally I was divorced. So because I know we got the stats, about women initiating divorce 70% and all that other stuff. I get it, but at the same time, I believe a lot of men just don't have the courage to do it, which isn't fair to either party.
Yeah. It really is. And I mean, I think I've seen in some circumstances where it's okay, I just don't want to have to go through the paperwork, or I don't want to have to deal with, the child support or the lifestyle. Like it is cumbersome, just in general. And then just the complete idea of having to start over. And depending on the dynamic of the relationship and the roles, right? For some men, they might not have cooked for themselves in 15 years, or they might have not done. I mean, it was even the same for women, right? Just depending on the role and dynamic. So I can only imagine that challenge, and also the pride part of being a man and having to like support this family, right? I would imagine there's some pressure there.
Yeah, it can be a little nervousness, especially when you're thinking on the other side, like you say, if it's maybe you weren't cooking, or she was always doing your laundry, all these different things. Which I think as men, we should just have that skill as adults, right?
Exactly.
So I think sometimes we do take our wives for granted. You get back out there and you're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
she did that. So, and unfortunately, you have to see it on the other side. But I think it's important that we don't take our spouse for granted. For those who listen and who might be going through a tough season right now.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that we do that because we do it so much, we just look at it like, oh, they're supposed to do it.
And it's
Fortunately.
just naturally supposed to happen. Yeah, where it's supposed to be this reciprocal, ever flowing. Yeah, I definitely understand that. And so you talk about the other side of it, right? So you get through the divorce and you're starting this new life. What did that look like for you to get to a point where you felt like, okay, I am ready and I feel confident enough to jump into this again?
Yeah, because it's funny at the time. I mean, I'm like, I'm 40, right? I'm like thinking, do I really want to do this again?
Yeah.
But I felt like I wasn't done yet. I felt like I still had a lot to offer. And me personally, honestly, I'm like a one woman kind of man.
Mm.
So
You
trying to
weren't
get
trying to
out in
date
the
around.
streets,
You
yeah,
weren't
I
trying to be in the
wouldn't.
streets like that. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I
that's fair.
remember, yeah, like I remember working at my job at the time, and once people knew I was going through my divorce, everybody was like, and I literally like just stayed down the street from my job, and it easily could have got out of hand. I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm just gonna go
Yeah.
home. Nah, I ain't about to get caught up. And I always tell people, I jokingly say this, but I'm serious. God has me on a short leash. Like I can't get away with anything.
Mm.
So I knew if I was going to end up getting into living a little loose or whatever, I knew it wasn't going to be anything good.
Yeah.
I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm just that type where I'm just like one woman man. Give me somebody that I can build with, that we can build together. And I just knew I wasn't done yet. God has blessed me with health and strength. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, I can do it. And I felt like I learned so much from going through the divorce. I was like, okay, here's my issues. And I'm very open about that. And I tell people all the time, especially on my podcast, like emotionally, I was immature.
Mm. Okay.
Like I had mommy wounds. I didn't even know. Like I didn't know until I really started going to therapy. Um, and just, emotional immaturity, stonewalling, like not being open, where we could just have open dialogues about things and stuff like that. Like I would just shut down because emotionally I was immature. And looking back, I can see how that can
It
get on
can, I
somebody's
think they
nerve.
say it's one of the four horsemen.
Yep, John
Yep.
Gottman.
It is one of the four horsemen to end the marriage. I know I had it in mine. And, you mentioned that like mother wounds and therapy. And I feel like from what I've seen in my experience, and even when I was going through my divorce support group, the men would talk about, really kind of speeding through that process and immediately going to the dating phase, right? You get over someone by getting under someone
Yeah.
and going that route. And I would hear these stories where it's like, okay, I immediately started dating and I was out there in the streets and I was partying and going back to that lifestyle. And 3 years later, I am back here in the same spot, And so that's where it really kind of makes me think how important it is to really unlearn yourself to know like what you're capable of doing with that newfound freedom, and also what you want to do with it, the wounds that you have before you can even enter into that relationship. So did you just kind of naturally go through like, okay, I'm going to go through this divorce and then I'm going to go through therapy? How did that come about for you?
I didn't get into therapy until after I remarried. But
Okay.
yeah, I didn't go to after, but for me, I spent a lot of time in like silence. All I did was like work.
Mm,
All I did, I was just working, like, and I didn't just like jump back and be like, hey, everybody, you know what I'm saying? But I was just one of those people where I was just like real chill. Let me just work on myself, just doing a lot of reading, a
yes.
lot of meditation and stuff like that. Like I'll talk to people here and there, but it wasn't nothing like serious, nothing.
Yeah.
But when I met my wife on Instagram and we dated long distance, so that was another dynamic where I still had to spend time by myself, and I think that's a step that a lot of people miss, is just being able to sit with yourself for a minute.
That's exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like that time to just create your own routine, have your own discipline. You're working your job, you're focused on what you need to. that kind of just really worked for you. And is really the same thing for me. The only reason I think therapy kind of strung through my divorce is because I was in couples therapy. And so it just naturally kind of weaved that way. However, I think I spent probably the first 2 years, not necessarily in isolation, but being very intentional about where I was and who I was with. Now, part of that was because I also have like trust issues and I was dealing with trauma. That was, I don't do that anymore. But still, I'm like, I'll tell people like even Jesus had to go to the wilderness and escape. Like sometimes you need a moment. Yeah. But I was very, very intentional about the time because I do think sometimes just, doing just the very basic things, waking up, going to work, meditating, and just getting back to simplicity before you start piling on all of these responsibilities. Because there's also like an identity shift that I feel like happens in divorce. It took me a good 8 months just to stop saying we. So it is also that I feel like as far as going from, especially I would imagine going from husband and then you were single and you're here. And I remember my ex, even telling me, he's like, Jaleesa, it is a very isolating space because I've gone from this, this bustling home where it's, dinner and bath time and all this. He's like, and here I am by myself and I have no one to talk to. And I don't care how I feel about my ex or what, whatever happened. Going through a divorce is already hard enough, but I can only imagine what it's like to just be in this house and you can physically see all of the changes. I at least still had my kiddos around and what that looked like. So I think there can be different dynamics to that.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I think it's important that, you do get that time to yourself. Like I said, that identity shift, I think that's very important as well, because like you said, when you said you had to get used to not saying we, that's powerful, because I think even in marriage, people don't even use we.
You think so?
I think we live in a individualistic,
it's a different age
culture. Yeah, because verbiage is everything. So
yeah,
even in, like I said, I think a lot of people don't even use we while they're married. So
wow,
it's me, or you. It's either blaming or it's about me.
I could definitely see that. I mean, I think for me, that was always kind of the perspective. And I even remember like looking around the room and noticing everyone has a wedding ring on. Okay, so you're not a part of this club anymore. Where are you? So I think I think that's why I mentioned the identity shift of it being a huge part. But speaking of identity, I know when we first talked, what I was really curious about was like, what are some themes that you are seeing with men when it comes to struggling in relationships, whether it is entering into marriage the first time or remarriage? And one of the topics that we talked about was identity. And I kind of wanted to expand on that and hear your thoughts on like how identity really plays a role for men specifically when it comes to marriage.
Yeah, I think when men realize who they are, I think it's easier to find someone who to marry. When you know who you are, I think a lot of issues in marriages, a lot of men don't know who they are.
Yeah.
A lot of times I tell guys, look, you are worth way more than what you bring home every 2 weeks. Some guys, they just think that I just bring home a paycheck, nobody respects me, I just do the mundane things around the house. And it's like, no, there's so much more. And I think we need to know that before marriage. And I think we might have talked about this before off air. And I know women deal with this too, but I think in the church, a lot of times, I think men are taught like their value is in marriage. Like you have to find your good thing. You have, your better half, and he who finds a wife, and, all these good things, get married. I mean, even to a degree that happened to me at my old church when I got married the first time around, because I'm like this deacon in training. Oh, you need a wife, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Instead of me just really being a single man sold out for Christ and living my life to please him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a lot of struggle with me. And so it's like, oh, so my value is in marriage, or it's in being with someone, opposed to living your Christ-centered life. Because I do believe that when you are living a life for God, that you're in your singleness, and you're going to events, and you're serving at your local church, and you living in your purpose. I think it's good. I think it's good that you stay single.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Instead of getting in somebody's life, and because everybody's not called to marry.
Ooh. And I think that is definitely a word. I was reading something earlier, and they're saying marriage has become almost idolized in a way. And I think the past 2 weeks, I've said several times, it's like, marriage is not required to enter into the kingdom of God. Why are we chasing it like it is? And this is not to belittle it. I do think that it is a beautiful thing. I love love. I truly do. I just think that, in some ways, we have been conditioned to think that our value is in marriage. I think we did talk about it off air, especially in the church. I experienced myself, preacher's kid over here, right? Like the grand finale was the wedding, right? Like that is what you were trained, which, hey, if that is your journey, that is your journey. But for me, I remember growing up, and the single woman, right? The woman that comes to church alone and she's serving, right? That's the woman that you need to pray for, because why doesn't she have a man? And I just remember, being in church by myself and feeling this sense of shame, because it's like, well, I'm supposed to be married. But I had watched this sermon, and it has stuck with me to this day, where it talks about living in the fullness of your singlehood, and you should be running after God. And if you meet someone, great. And if they keep up with you on that journey, then you introduce yourself. But our sole purpose is to run after him. And so I do agree with you. I think sometimes, because we feel like we need to play a role, we actually end up playing a role. And I have to say, there are a lot of well-paid actors and actresses.
I like that. No, I like that. That's good. I tell people all the time that God didn't create marriage to be more fulfilling than him. But
Yes.
a lot of times people think, like you say, they think this is the grand finale. Like, okay, marriage is the apex of life. No, it's not, But I do believe, if you are walking in your purpose, hey, if you find somebody, praise the Lord. If not, you know what, you good, because I think you can be more effective being single, because you're not being bound by, a spouse and kids, and, so however you're living your life, you can live it. You're not accountable for anybody else, but I just think you could be more effective.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I think that is probably what's more on my heart right now than the concept of remarriage. That's just where I stand, because, I think part of it is what I tell people with divorce, especially when we kind of start going down the pity conversation route, is, I think there is a beauty to being able to get some of that freedom. And for me, I've been very blessed to where now legally I'm required to have help and get a break. So why not use that to walk in my purpose? And so I really do stand in gratitude for that. But I think when I start to also think about, okay, what does marriage look like? It's also, well, Jaleesa, are you sure you want to do that again? And I think that's a lot of people, right? Where you say you have to build the confidence. So what do you have to say to people who are, they are ready to get back out there, maybe, but the thought of, being with another person, entering into a serious relationship is terrifying.
Yeah. And I get that question a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a lot of it has to do with confidence, but also realizing that what happened to you in your last marriage or your relationship, the person you're talking to now is not that person. I think that's where a lot of fear and trepidation come in.
Yeah.
I got hurt last time, and I'm like, yeah, but this person isn't last time. The person you're talking to now. And it takes a lot. Don't get me wrong, because, you know, a lot of times we hold on to that past pain. We're like, if money was an issue in your last marriage, next time you get into a relationship, you like, I need somebody who know how to manage money. But there might be some other holes.
There's going to be something else that just pops up. Yeah.
So that's the thing. I think it's about giving someone a clean slate and letting them know that, okay, and even letting them know, like, this is where I'm struggling as far as pain wise. Like, look, this is what happened to me in my last marriage or my last relationship, and being open about that.
Yeah.
And giving that person the freedom to ask you questions, opposed to being defensive or not telling the whole story.
And I feel like that alone tells you if someone's right for you. First being like, if they can't tell you what went wrong in the marriage, and not just what went wrong, how did they contribute to what went wrong and what did they take from that? I feel like that alone eliminates 50%.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes to what you're saying with the identity and taking that time to yourself to really think through, to reflect, right? And to think about what you want going forward. So how did you kind of know, okay, I feel really good about, you know, getting back out there and getting into a relationship?
Well, I met my wife on Instagram. So it was like we were talking long distance. And I think for her heart for God, and I know this sounds churchy, but I seen her walk with God like the way we would talk about things and stuff like that. And I remember one time I was talking to this other girl, right? Quick story.
Yeah.
Talking to this other girl, it was long distance, right? Just talking. And I remember one day I asked her, I said, because this was always my test. I was like, hey, how do you feel about us just having a devotional one day a week? You know, let's, whatever you feel like God is saying to you, we're going to read, the book of Ephesians. What do you think about this? Chapter 2. So she told me, she was like, yeah, that's cool, but I ain't really into all that like that.
Okay.
So and I'm grateful that she told me that, because that let me know, okay, that's not what I'm looking for.
And she was honest.
That she was honest, and I appreciated that. And I always tell people, I wanted to marry somebody who loved God more than they loved me. And that was my wife. And some traits, like she was really into me. She was interested in getting to know me. And then I tell people another trait that she had that I thought was really great was that she loved doing outreach for the homeless. She loved doing for people who can't do anything for her in return.
Yeah.
So little traits like that. Heart big as Texas, just a real sweetheart. And like I say, was somebody that was really interested in knowing. And so I was like, yeah, let's take this a little further. And so with her and I, we would have the Bible studies online, or we would do it over Skype. So I guess I'm dating myself. And that's how we just started talking. And then we started reading books together. And then that way we got to know more about each other. So even though you ask these basic questions and all this other stuff, when you read books together, you find out so much more, because you're like, when I was reading that chapter, I remember when I was 12. And now you like.
And it goes into a deeper conversation. Yes. I don't know. I think there's something really nice about the long distance piece, because it really forces you to get to know someone. That is very similar to my brother and his sister-in-law. Their story is the sweetest. They met through Facebook, and she was selling cookies, just selling cookies. Just selling cookies online. Sure. And my brother happened to come across it and, started responding to her, and they started talking. And I think less than a year later, they were engaged, and they were driving back and forth between Dallas and Alabama and just talking for hours. And the beautiful part about it, God is so funny in his timing and his placement, is that like our grandparents had crossed paths 20 years ago. They had no idea. My brother had been engaged before and had a failed engagement. And I love my sister-in-law. She is God sent. So yes, I do love love.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I love when it works like that. Well, the only other thing that, I wanted to ask you about is your coaching services and what that looks like for someone that is interested and how they can reach out to you. Because you have dropped a ton of gems that I know several of our community members are going to want to dive into deeper with you.
Yes, for sure. You can go to the website at scarytoremarry.com. Just all one word, scary to remarry. And then you can go under the products tab and then or service tab, and you'll be able to see my coaching sessions and availability. And then I just came out with a new ebook called
Hmm.
Chance. I'm excited about that as well. So be able to come out with the ebook. And it's just basically a workbook just to show you like, where are you? Let's
Yeah.
let's let's ask some real tough questions, and not the basic questions, on a second date, but really in depth questions. And it kind of like gives you like this score kind of thing. It shows you like, okay, you might not be ready if this fits the bill, or you might be ready if this. So I'm excited about that.
I love that. Okay, I will make sure we drop that link in the show notes so that everybody has access to it. Yes, yes. Well, Sean, I really appreciate you coming onto the podcast. This was really helpful for me. I know it's going to be very helpful for the community. And thank you always for sharing your heart. We always hope this is an open, safe space. So I appreciate that you felt comfortable. And thank you so much again.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Jaleesa. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I will see you next Tuesday.
Okay.